Cruz yesterday was talking about guns on what committee was it? It was Patrick Leahy's committee on I don't know Ovaltine, and he was chairing this thing, and Cruz starts in about the Constitution, and they don't like it when you talk about the Constitution. No. Listen to this exchange.
Is that the Constitution, in my opinion, should be the touchstone of everything we do. Some have suggested in this hearing that the role of Congress is to pass laws and it's up to the court to consider constitutionality. I would point out that every one of us takes an oath to defend the Constitution.
Thank you for the lecture.
And that...
You hear somebody in the background mumble on a mic that I don't know if he knows is open or not. He probably doesn't care. Thank you for the lecture.
Yeah, well, here's why the Blaze is saying that it is Leahy, because the chairman's mic is always left open.
Oh.
Everybody else's mic is usually turned off, and the chairman's mic is left open. So they believe that it is either Leahy or someone right next to Leahy who leans into Leahy.
Right, and obviously it was the voice of a 137-year-old, so we do think it was Leahy.
Yeah, it could be.
Here's another one where that happened.
In my view, the Constitution is particularly important when the Bill of Rights is unpopular. That was the entire purpose of the Bill of Rights. When our rights are popular, we don't need the Constitution. The purpose of
that's Leahy. I'm telling you.
I'm tired of these condescending whippersnappers.
Here's why they don't like it. Now play the part where Feinstein goes off on him.
Yeah, this is okay. Yeah, it's this one.
Let me just make a couple of points in response. One, I'm not a sixth grader.
No, a sixth grader has more respect for the Constitution. We know you're not a sixth grader.
I've been on this committee for 20 years. I was a mayor for 9 years. I walked in, I saw people shot. I've looked at bodies that have been shot with these weapons.
Immediately to emotion.
Yeah, immediately to emotion.
No facts.
We'll go to Ann Coulter here because she takes her apart here. But let's go to why these guys do not like it when you talk about the Constitution.
Oh, they hate it. They have been there. They have been entrenched for so long in their ivory towers, and with this power, they don't want to hear about the Constitution. So, they don't think that they're constrained by the Constitution.
Here's what they really truly believe. If they were honest, they would say to these guys, you get here, you just got here, you're a little baby. And you come in here with your cute little, I'm with the people, and the people believe in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't work. It hasn't been working for a long time. That's not the way it works here in America anymore. It's not the way power works here in Washington. So stop your cute little lecture. Yeah. You will figure it out in time. Shut up and sit down. And that's exactly what they believe.
Exactly. And they will say things like, I love the Constitution as much as you do. And they don't. No. But they don't. But they don't have any respect at all for the Constitution.
They say that because they really, truly believe the Constitution is like the flag. You look at it and you're like, it stands for so many great principles. But you don't, the flag doesn't guide you on what you're doing.
Right.
And that's the way they look at the Constitution.
We moved way beyond all that.
Right. I love the flag, too.
And you don't get how it works around here.
Right.
It's much different. We have to do things differently.
This has been said to me before by somebody that was breathtaking. Look, you and I, we both love the Constitution. But there are times and things that you just have to do. No. You always follow the Constitution. But they really, truly believe that they just have to do the things that they have to do. And if the Supreme Court decides to overturn it, then that's fine with the Supreme Court. But then they go the extra step, and they make sure that there is nobody that respects the Constitution on that court. They make sure that if you respect the Constitution, you don't get a role in court. So they don't respect the Constitution, and they don't want the judges to respect the Constitution. And they just think that these guys coming in here are just little babies. Oh, look at them coming in here with their little... You know what? Quite honestly, it's like journalists, old journalists, the way they look at these new journalists, and they sit them down, and, they're going out, together somehow or another. The new journalist is sitting next to the veteran, and the veteran says, listen, kid, I was like you once, all right? Idealistic. Nothing changes. They're all dirtbags. They're all scumbags. That's just the way it is. Now get over it. That's exactly who these guys are, and that's exactly why you need term limits.
Yes. Why can't we need them so badly? Jim DeMint put out a constitutional amendment when he was still in the Senate, and it got 27 votes in the Senate. 27. That was said that would limit senators to 2 terms, and I think Congress to 3 in the House. I mean, that's something that's supported, by the way, by over 70% of Americans. Yet these guys will never do it because it affects them.
Do you see the chart I sent you a couple of days ago on this? I sent you a chart on term limits.
I do not remember seeing this.
When George Washington was in office, when up until 1800, the re-election of new senators was almost, it was like 99%. Senators, House of Representatives, they would go out and they would say, hey, re-elect me. George Washington is still in office, and it's almost 99%. That's at the beginning of the country. Then it goes down, and it slowly goes down, and it gets down to about 60% until 1913 and Woodrow Wilson. And then it starts creeping up, and it is slowly crept up and takes a real big jump in the 1930s and 40s, and it slowly creeps up, and we're back up to about 99%. That you don't have a chance of unelecting these guys. And the reason is once they put in the graft, once they've put in the candy for the American people, you can't vote against these guys because they know I'll give you more stuff. These new guys, they'll turn it off. And so they are doing exactly what Ben Franklin said they would do. And if you look, it's Woodrow Wilson. We had about a 60% return rate. Now it's up in the high 90s again. And the only other time in American history that it was like that was under George Washington. Imagine what the country felt like under George Washington. A little different. And when we held on to him. Now, do we feel like this? What's incredible to me is nobody likes Congress. Nobody.
8% approval.
And you can't throw them out. How's that even possible?
Yeah. And a person like Dianne Feinstein should have gone a long time ago.
Long time.
Leahy.
Let's be fair.
Goodbye.
Lindsey Graham.
Goodbye.
Long time ago.
Yep.
John McCain. Long time ago.
Long time ago.
As soon as they start to say, I'm going to be on this committee and I'm going to be done. They're done. As soon as they start to say to their friends, and if you know any freshman or sophomore who is in Congress, and they have been saying to you, yes, but next year I can chair this committee. Next year I will really have power because next term I can tell them to get out. They're losing their soul. Tell them to get out.
Yeah, and term limits eliminates that, obviously, because nobody has the seniority to stay on these committees forever. There's not another term, so you can't promise that. You just have to do what you think is right, and then you're done. You serve, and then you go back to private life.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
That is one of the things that they use against term limits, though, because it takes you that long just to understand how Washington works.
No.
But that's the problem. They do
I
understand
know.
it, and that's why it sucks.
Again, when did we start lobbying Congress? When did these lobbyists start? Under Woodrow Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
They started under Woodrow Wilson, and then once the war was over, it was all disbanded. He said, "You know what? You guys come to Washington. You lobby us on your war machine." And so they came in. And they were lobbying him on what to buy and what they could do and everything else. And then they left as soon as the war was over. And I don't remember the guy's name, but he said, this is crazy. We could do this with everything. And by the 1930s, and about 1925 or so, he was back building offices and making sure that he had lobbyists for anybody that wanted to lobby Congress. And professional lobbyists started then. That's the thing that everybody says, well, you don't know how it works. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You don't want them to learn any of that.
Yeah. That's we're going to get to this audio, but it's Dianne Feinstein saying, I've been here for a million years. Don't lecture me on the Constitution. I've been here.
Yeah, listen to this.
I've seen the bullets that implode. In Sandy Hook, youngsters were dismembered. Look, there are other weapons. I've been I'm not a lawyer, but after 20 years, I've been up close and personal to the Constitution. I have great respect for it.
What does that mean? Stop, just a second. I've been up close and personal to the guy. You know what that is? That's Brennan. That's Brennan saying, I've touched the Constitution. You can't even touch the Constitution with George Washington's handwriting. I put my hand on it. I took the oath of office with my hand on that Constitution. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of baseball games. It doesn't make me good at baseball.
Right. I've been up and close in person. You know whose bat I have?
Yeah, Albert Pujols.
Yeah, I've been up close and personal. Albert Pujols.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't lecture me about baseball.
It's insane.
Are you kidding?
It's an awful argument.
Weapons of war, and the Heller decision clearly points out 3 exceptions, 2 of which are pertinent here. And so it's fine you want to lecture me on the Constitution. I appreciate it. Just know I've been here for a long time. I've passed on a number of bills. I've studied the Constitution myself. I am reasonably well educated, and I for the lecture. Incidentally, this does not prohibit, you use the word prohibit, it exempts 2,271 weapons. Isn't that enough?
What is this? Stop.
Isn't that
This
enough?
doesn't prohibit. This exempts. Wait. Okay, so you're not prohibiting the use of it. You're just exempting
the use of other things.
protection.
2,000.
Right.
Like 2,000 weapons can be used.
Right. So the other ones that you can't use, those aren't prohibited?
No, they're just exempt from the protection of the Constitution.
Oh.
No, okay.
Oh.
That's way better.
That's way
Yes,
better.
yes,
Yeah,
thank
that's much
you.
better.
The United States,
Mr.
do they
Chairman.
need a bazooka?
No, there's
Do
the.
they
Yes,
need...
stop. Yes.
That's a great question.
Yes. Yes.
Comes
And
up
here's
all the
why.
time now.
And here's why. If anybody within the sound of my voice thinks that the Second Amendment is about hunting, you're wrong. You're wrong. The Second Amendment is about an out-of-control government because our founders fought the British, and they had no weapons. They were farmers. They had nothing but muskets. That's it. The British had ships. And it was the greatest navy and army in the world, and they went up against them. Now, they did it in a time when you could just grab your musket. But people also had cannons. You were allowed to have a cannon. On your farm, you could have a cannon. That was the top-of-the-line, weapon at the time. So they also had cannons. And the people could make a cannon. Wait, what do you think they did? How did they get those cannons? And then they took them from the British when they would win, which was very rare. So what happens? They write in the Constitution, it will not be infringed. The people's right to bear any kind of arm, any arms, to have them and bear them shall not be infringed, meaning they are not to be limited. Because at their time, they thought another tyrant is coming. Remember, they offered George Washington the kingship. Be a king. And he had the strength to say no because he didn't want another dictator. He didn't want the people to be underneath a king. And so they said the only way this will happen, the only way that people will remain free is if they have every weapon they need in case of an out-of-control government, in case somebody becomes a tyrant. So if you believe that you're not going to win against the United States government anyway because they have all the airplanes, they have all the guns, they have all the weapons. You're just not going to win. Then you're making a case that you have already infringed on the Second Amendment so much that you've made it irrelevant. You're making a case you have too much gun control because it wasn't about hunting. It wasn't about who needs somebody if a robber comes into your house. That's not what it's about. You're making the case that we should have bazookas, that we should have tanks. And quite frankly, if the people of Texas had a whole bunch of tanks, let me tell you something, they wouldn't screw with Texas. They would not screw with Texas. If the state of Texas had a whole bunch of arms, nobody would screw with Texas. Now, would they?
And it's not about using them against the government. It's about deterring the government from ever coming after you, so
That's
you
right.
have to use them.
And if somebody's out of control with their tank, well, then we go arrest that guy with a tank. Because there will be people who are out of control. Because people like power. People go crazy. That just happens. That's a way of life. Sane people can go crazy. And I know it's unpopular to say that in a time when you're starting to believe that genetics, again, plays a role in absolutely everything, that you have no control over yourself. It's just how you were born. Well, then you're going to go down the same road that they went in the 1930s, and we all know how that ended. I'd prefer to stick to the Constitution, and it's not a cute little old dusty document that you put your hand on. It's an owner's manual.